Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Superwoman Wellness, where we are all determined to bring you back to your superpowered self. And you can't be superpowered without sleep. And I have lived this one. I worked ER shifts, flipped from day to night, night to day, had babies, did all of that at the same time. And then, of course, with opening a practice with those young children, spent many a night not sleeping. And it definitely takes a toll on your health. That's why I'm excited to bring on the show today Terry Cralle. She's a representative of the Better Sleep Council, a registered nurse, and a certified clinical sleep educator who specializes in sleep health and wellness. She's a national speaker, an educator, and an author on sleep. She's the co-founder of a 4-bed sleep disorders clinic and has served as a consultant to a variety of industries and organizations on the topic of sleep health. In 2016, she published a book called Sleeping Your Way to the Top: How to Get the Sleep You Need for Success. All right, sleeping your way to the top, a whole different meaning on that, right? We have to talk about sleep because it does seem to be, something that globally we're suffering from. Most people don't get. In fact, my previous guest actually had a statistic. She said most Americans get under 6 hours of sleep every night. What's the deal with sleep? Why is it so important? Why are we not getting enough? What's changed? Give us a little bit of background on this whole sleep conundrum.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mess. It's definitely a mess. And I think for years, we've had a problem, a disconnect in our culture for a long time, where we have idealized and glamorized even people that say they don't get much sleep because they're high achievers. They want to be successful. So we've sort of looked at sleeplessness as a very positive and admirable character trait. And we are not looking at sleep as the biological need and requirement that it is. And we're seeing it through the wrong lens, I think, all too often. But I think the recent research, sleep medicine is a relatively new subspecialty in medicine, as you know, and the research is fast and furious, but it's very compelling because it's showing us that we have to get sleep if we want to be physically healthy, mentally healthy, and we have a lot of short and long-term consequences if we don't get sleep. So I think we have to, in knowing that, we sort of have to readjust our lens and look at sleep as a positive, getting sleep, it's in a positive light and as the ultimate form of responsibility and self-care and being a good either a caretaker, spouse, partner, parent. We're enhanced immensely by getting sufficient sleep. We're safer, we're healthier, we're happier, we're more motivated. So to sum it up, I think sleep has to not be seen as an obstacle to success and quality of life, but rather a means of achieving that. So again, it's sort of flipping the script.
Well, I think that, here's what I think happens, and I'm curious to understand your opinion. We're trained from an early age to not sleep, right? We're trained to stay up late for exams, to cram before finals, all of these type of things. And very few, when I even think back to like middle school and high school, forget college, like very few people were in a rhythm of saying, oh my gosh, I got 8 hours of sleep last night. It was more bragging rights to say, oh my God, I didn't go to bed till like 3 a.m. I studied all night, that type of thing. And I think that sort of, kind of drags into adult life for sure. And you're right. It is kind of like a badge of honor to say that you didn't sleep or you didn't get enough sleep or you can function on X hours or X amount of sleep. Would you say, and I get asked this question all the time, if there's so much time in a given day, would you choose sleep over exercise? What would you say to that?
Sleep. Sleep comes first. It's foundational. And I think that's where a lot of the problems arise is not understanding it, that it comes first. There's no point in exercising. You won't reap the benefits of exercise if you're not getting sufficient sleep. And you know how we always looked at those 3 pillars of health and wellness is sleep, diet, and exercise, but they've always been sort of imaged as 3 pillars side by side. And it's actually a triangle. And the sleep is foundation, diet and exercise are completely contingent upon sleep. And I think, if we can get that through people's heads, I mean, it's a tall order because I think it goes against the grain. I mean, when I was a kid, if we were well behaved and good, we got to stay
Stay
up
up
late.
late. Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
people
Yeah.
got sent to their rooms or go to bed early if they're misbehaving or in trouble. So there's always been this negative light. And I think I wrote a kid's book back in the day about bedtime battles, and just understanding how I know bedtime can be a very trying time for everyone. But that's because we're tired, we don't understand sleep, and we're not sort of approaching it in the best way. But I think as we learn more about it as a society, I think we're going to turn it around just like we did smoking. Um, I remember people were smoking on the campus of the hospital where I was trained in nursing, and
Wow.
smoking was in restaurants. I remember my father lighting up a cigarette after
Yeah.
we finished eating in a restaurant. We didn't know. We simply didn't know how bad it was, how unsafe it was, unhealthy, etc. And I think the same can be said for sleep. I don't think we've fully appreciated how dangerous a lack of sleep is, how bad it is for us. And that research is churning out every day. So I think in response to that, we're making, we're making
Headway.
some
Yeah.
progress, but
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more to do. And I think I still do a whole lot of talks where I'm talking to people in small audiences, large audiences, and I still get pushback. I mean, we're working hard to try to get healthy school start times. And most of,
Such a good point. Yeah.
when the high schools particularly start at 7 in the morning,
Hmm.
these teenagers have the phase delay. They don't get the melatonin production until late in the evening. So they're sort of biologically wired to
Right.
fall asleep later and wake up later, just like elderly people are wired the opposite,
Hmm.
falling asleep earlier and waking up earlier. So we're really, got to deal with some biological changes. And I get pushback from educators, parents saying, well, no, we can't coddle them and no, they have to learn how to do this and that. I mean, we're still not really protecting their sleep like we would want to protect. We want to make sure they have sufficient food and that they're hydrated. We should have the same approach with protecting their sleep. And if we all are on the same page of understanding how important it is for our health and well-being, I think we'll be doing some more social policy changes to make sure everyone as best we can make sure everyone's getting the sleep they need. Because I mean, look at the mental health crisis
Oh,
in our
absolutely.
teens
Yeah.
today, and a lot of that teenage angst is sleep deprivation.
Definitely. No, it's interesting. So, even my husband will sort of call me out a little bit, and he's right, to be honest. Like, I think there's a little bit of a rebellion. I think I've just been trained since
Mhm.
childhood to like push through, right? Like I'm gonna push through that window where I should be probably in bed and falling asleep to get like one more thing done or to read one more thing or to watch something or whatever else. And he goes, "You're just rebelling." He's like, "You're rebelling
Mhm.
against your own cycle." He goes, "What's the rebellion about?"
Yeah,
That type of thing. And he's
good
right.
point.
It's kind of like this, I don't know. I don't even know what to call it, but I definitely recognize that in me for sure, not honoring the window where I may get sleepy and wanting to push through that window a little bit more,
Mhm.
and I think it's just been honestly years of training and years of,
Mhm.
getting by on less and less sleep. I think it would be super helpful for me personally, and then for everyone watching and listening to kind of go through a couple things. The first is define good sleep. What is good sleep and good sleep hygiene? How would you define that? Is that defined by the number of hours, the amount of R, like I'm wearing this Aura ring, right? The amount of REM or deep sleep? Like, how would you define good quality sleep?
A lot a lot of it is how you feel when you wake up and how you're functioning during the day. I mean, we've got to look at it in terms of daytime functioning. Um, and there are a couple of things to look at. Are we practicing good sleep hygiene or respecting our need for sleep? Are we being consistent? Consistent bedtimes, consistent wake times. Um, and I think that it's, to me, the ultimate practice of self-care to make sure you get that sleep. And then I like sleep trackers. I mean, I know there's some people saying that they're stressful and that it may
Mhm.
end up hurting your sleep if you're stressed out. I don't know. I mean, I think we count calories and we count steps. I think we can count sleep without freaking out about it. I think that's doable. I think we have to look at it in terms of are we doing, this screen thing.
I know.
The screens are here to stay,
Right.
and demonizing them and, you can't do that and you can't have that kind of thing isn't going to help. What we have to do is say, here's a practical way to live with it. Here's our media curfew. This works for us and our family. This is how we're going to approach it. Let's swap out something else in our bedtime routine that is pleasurable and nice and something to look forward to that doesn't include screens. And I think, again, bedtime routine, it's not just for kids. I think grown-ups have to practice a bedtime routine to transition successfully from wake to sleep in a good manner. I think it's how many, do you wake up a lot during the night or do you sleep through? Are you comfortable? Is your room optimized for sleep? I think we spend a lot of time and attention on our kitchens and other areas of
Right.
the house without really
Right.
saying, let me just assess how dark is it in the room. I mean, gosh, the difference between a room you may think is dark, then you put up the blackout curtains and it's totally dark. Oh my gosh, the
Right.
difference in your sleep quality is amazing. Um, Noise levels, and again, I think people can lose their reference to feeling well rested when they wake up, and they might attribute it to I'm a certain age, so I'm not going to feel fantastic when I wake up. I just wouldn't go there. I would really I think people need to spend more time. I mean, if we truly respect sleep and the biological benefits that it offers us, I think we would probably pay just a little more time and attention, optimizing the environment, paying closer attention. And if there is a problem, if say we're in bed 8 hours a night and we still really aren't feeling energized and good and productive through the day, let's make sure there's not a sleep disorder going
Right.
on.
Right.
And I think that we should kind of stop. This is a great place to stop and say sleep is a vital sign.
Yeah.
And it really should be addressed at every healthcare provider encounter. It's that important. It's that foundational and fundamental. So it should be addressed, good, bad, or indifferent. You may not realize, or how is your bed partner sleeping? Is there a lot of witnessed snoring, apnea, stops, starts, and breathing, things like that? Let's pay attention and address it in a timely manner since it is so foundational. And to get back to exercise, I mean, I think back in the day, we were told that unless you're up at 6 a.m. at the gym, anything later in the day could hurt your sleep. Well, I
Right.
think recent research has shown that, I mean, I go to the gym in the evenings and it helps me sleep. I think I don't want people to say I can't exercise because that's, my time frame is different or my chronotype is different.
Mhm.
And so I think we have to be flexible and say 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at the gym. When I go to the gym, it's packed at that hour.
Right.
And
Right.
these people, I think that bidirectional relationship between exercise and sleep is so critical. Even just getting a little bit of exercise really contributes to enhanced sleep quality. And then when we have that enhanced sleep quality, we're going to have more energy, more motivation, more optimism. We'll be
Definitely.
more productive, getting more things done, more time for exercise, and it builds upon itself. And it's really a positive outcome.
I love that, and I love that you mentioned chronotypes. Maybe explain that idea to someone who hasn't heard that word before. What is a chronotype? How do you know what yours is? Maybe dial into that for a second.
Yeah, it's real interesting. You can be a night owl or early lark, and there's probably two variations in between that. But it's been an interesting an interesting thing to note because I see that people sort of the night owls. I know people do spend a lot of time trying to change that
Right.
depending on their career choices. It's not very easy to do so, and some people can't do it. There's a large genetic component to that, to your chronotype,
Mm.
and you may notice it in your family. I mean, I'm a family of night owls, and it can be tough. And I know there's that bee society that
Mhm.
does a lot of social activism, trying to, it's that, say a night owl isn't necessarily lazier or less motivated. they're just not up at 5 a.m.
Right.
like the larks are.
Right.
So again, let's not characterize it. Let's look at it as, a genetic thing going on. But might have to work your career around that. Or you can change with some help with the sleep professional. I mean, there are other things you can do, but it's important. Michael Bruce
Yeah.
has
Oh, yeah.
great information on
Yeah.
chronotypes and has them divided up into the animals. And I think it's worth looking into because I think it's very revealing.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm definitely an early lark. I like my 5 o'clock in the mornings. I love the
Uh-huh.
morning. It's my favorite time of day. Then I start to kind of do this as the day goes on. So when we think about the other thing I really wanted to do is dial into just because, as a mom, as a wife, and then seeing so many different patients, like what are good sleep patterns if we can just take a second and dive into our toddlers, our elementary school kids, our middle schoolers, our high schoolers, adults, and the elderly? What should we be thinking through some of those phases in terms of their ideal sleep patterns?
Hmm. Yeah, and I think if I get one message across today, it would be talk about sleep early and often with little kids because sleep is so important. And you talk about childhood and brain
Yeah.
development. We really have to make this a top priority with little kids, and get these sleep habits established quite early in life. When you think about the consequences of insufficient sleep, let's say in children of all ages, it's problems learning, um, issues with school, issues with behavior, physical health problems, obviously just some things, bullying, aggression, a lot of emotional problems, later on mental health problems in the teen years. When you think about all of the downsides, and if you establish that healthy sleep lifestyle very early, you can truly change the trajectory of a child's life. I mean, that brain development and everything stretched out in front of that child, that whole course can be impacted positively or negatively by how much sleep they're getting. So I just wish we could just take it more seriously as a society. I think we should talk about it in school. Um, you know, not having, I mean, just as someone who went through nursing school,
Mhm.
we didn't talk about it
No,
back.
yeah, we
That, I
don't.
mean, that
Yeah,
was a long time ago.
right.
And I don't like admitting that, but it's, you think about the safety issues and how errors are made and things like that. Um, it's so important. But anyway, with the kids, I think you got to start the conversation early. I think we have to be good role models. I think we have to be very unapologetic for our need for sleep. We have
Mhm.
to present it as a biological requirement.
Right,
And I was just telling someone we wouldn't brag about not drinking water during the day or,
right,
hey, I've learned how to get by on less water than you get. I don't need, I figured it out. I push through it.
right.
I don't stay hydrated. I'm too busy for that. We wouldn't do that. And we don't do that with food, but we do it with sleep. And to a shocking level.
Yeah.
I think people throw their hands up, or what can be done about it, or have you talked to your doctor about it? No. I mean, what are they going to do? It's a behavior issue. Well, it is and it isn't, but there are a lot of things we can do. I mean, if we start the sleep hygiene early with kids, get that bedtime routine is so important because that helps ensure they're getting
Definitely.
sufficient sleep when we have that wind down time and we go through those steps.
So
A
do
lot
we
of
think
good
that do you think
research.
like toddlers, 12 hours of sleep every night, do you think that's ideal for them? Um,
Yeah, it goes by, there's age, they've got it listed in by years at the
right.
National Sleep Foundation and the
Gotcha. Okay.
American Academy of Sleep Medicine has it listed by age
By age.
and
Okay.
their requirements. And I think parents really need to spend time making sure the kids are getting that. And if they're not, pediatric sleep doctors are out there ready, willing, and able to help, and that should be brought to their attention for ongoing problems.
And what about
Um,
us? What about adults and maybe even the elderly? Kind of what's a good guideline? Is it 7 hours? Do elderly folks need more? And where do naps fit into all of this? Give us a sense of
seven
that.
Yeah, 7 to 9 hours for adults. And elderly people, I think it's been a little miscommunicated that they need less sleep. They really don't need less sleep. I think it's just more difficult for them
Right.
to get that consolidated sleep at night for a variety of reasons. And sure, naps are great. I just don't think we can say good, bad, or neither with naps. It just depends.
Hmm.
It depends. Um, are you doing, is it planned napping or inadvertent napping? Are you falling asleep? Um, when you're talking to someone, are you falling asleep behind at the red light? We've
Hmm.
had patients come in, on crutches because they fell asleep at a red light. That's not
Right.
napping. That's, what's going on? Why are you tired? Is it just something, if I have an early flight, you can be sure I'm going to take a nap later,
Hmm.
just to try to not avoid accruing a sleep debt, and doing that kind of thing, because you want that everyday thing. And we have to be careful. All adults and kids have to be careful about yo-yo sleeping,
Right.
undersleeping during the week because of our schedules, whether it's work or school, then oversleeping on the weekends. Now, I don't want to say don't oversleep on the weekends. I mean, catch up sleep has been shown to be helpful, but I just don't think we can depend on that, because the problems happening every day during the week, say that you're not getting sufficient sleep, really affect us on every level, even a cellular level.
Hmm.
So we don't know if we can undo the damage. So, I mean, I just don't make that an intentional way to schedule your life,
Yeah.
is
So
to
don't
say,
think that you
yeah,
can like
purposefully.
crash and burn Monday through
Right.
Friday and then make up for it Saturday and Sunday, right? Can you
Yeah.
ever repay a sleep debt? Like what, when you have, if you're, short an hour or two on a
Hmm.
given day, can you make
Hmm.
that up the next day? Is that a thing? Does that actually work for the brain?
Yeah, it's not hour for hour. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess they've done some studies on the long-term sleep debt. Some people are in chronic sleep debt, and it really isn't paid back, but hour by hour. But I think to avoid it is the best thing.
Yeah.
And I also think, though, that there are people that have been undersleeping for a long time that are not statistically or genetically short sleepers.
Hmm.
That's 1% of the population. Um, Give it like for 2 weeks, get that 7 to 9 hours every night and see if you don't feel a big difference. I mean,
Mm.
I would say ideally it would probably take more than 2 weeks to repay some heavy duty sleep debt. But I hate to tell people a month because people then just don't want to do it.
Right.
But if they start feeling a little bit better, sort of toward the end of 2 weeks, they'll probably stick with it. Very few people go back to undersleeping or, saying I don't need it or I've
Right.
gotten used to it,
Right.
because they haven't and they don't,
Well,
for one. So,
Hippocrates used to
yeah.
put people in sleep
Hmm.
chambers, right? That was a healing
Hmm.
modality, is literally put people in a
It's on.
chamber for a month, to
Yeah.
reverse disease. So,
Yeah.
we know it has so many great benefits for just our overall health. How does stress impact our sleep? What's happening there?
Yeah. That's another great bi-directional relationship, sort
Hmm.
of like with the sleep and exercise. The more stressed we are, obviously our sleep takes a hit. And then when our sleep takes a hit, we're more stressed. And, it's one of those things where probably starting with sleep again is where to start, doing everything you can possibly to get that sleep you need, and see the stress levels going down. I think it's the researcher at Walter Reed. He said sleep is like Kevlar for the mind,
Mm-hmm.
makes you, very resilient, bulletproof
Very
is
much,
is
yeah.
what, yeah. And I think we're just so much more resilient when we're well rested. And again, I think there's some short-term sort of issues that people do equate with insufficient sleep. We're cloudy thinking, we're forgetful. We can't, where did I put the keys when I came in the
Right.
house? There's some things that we say, oh God, I'm so tired, or just, you have that cranky feeling like I do need a nap. But when it happens over the long term, we don't necessarily make the connection. Um, I think one patient we treated, was a mom, and she had some young kids. We treated her for sleep apnea. She had a severe case. But when she came back in a month for her follow up appointment, her husband was with her, and he said, first thing out of his mouth when he sat down, he said, "Thank you for giving me my wife back."
I love that.
And
Yeah.
we weren't talking about the snoring. Obviously, she's on CPAP, not snoring, but he said her whole outlook was back
Yep.
to how he remembered, optimistic, kind, patient, good with the kids. I mean, he said it just got to a point of, you know, just always in a bad mood,
Mhm.
always negative. Everything was suffering, family life, work life,
Yeah.
all because of
Sleep.
undiagnosed sleep disorder.
I
So I
mean,
think,
this happened in our
yeah,
family too. I think after my husband got COVID, I think it affected, COVID's affected people in a different way, but post COVID, he
sure.
developed like a sleep disorder and he
Hmm.
went for months without sleeping properly, waking up every day at like 2 or 3. And he just got darker and darker and darker. Like he was so I mean, it was such a bad time in our family. Like he was just
Oh,
so
yeah.
off, and then finally corrected, and we did a bunch
Hmm.
of things to get, and like he's back to being his chirpy,
Hmm.
like, happy
Yeah.
self. So it can have a profound impact on
Hmm.
relationships and kind of everything else around you. I'm curious, I know you represent the Better Sleep Council. I'm curious if they have a stance on caffeine and alcohol and how that relates to sleep, ADD medications and sleep. We have so many variables when it comes to getting a healthy night's sleep, right? Even from where
Hmm.
I sit, there are many medications that disrupt sleep. There are hormones that disrupt sleep. There's a whole wax ball, right? But I think you're coming into it saying, "Hey, pay attention to sleep. You guys are all paying attention to weight and
Hmm.
all this other stuff, but we're not paying attention to sleep, and sleep is a vital sign." But how much are we in recognition of these other factors impacting sleep?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, even medication, what time of day you take it.
Right.
Again, that's why it's so important to keep that dialogue going with your healthcare provider. All these things do impact it. So, I mean, I think it's just sort of watching trends. That's why I do like sleep tracking. If you
Yeah.
don't want to invest in a device, you can get a sleep diary or you can just make notes. But I mean, I think it's worth looking at things through that lens, looking at it with sort of a slant toward, how am I sleeping and how knowing that sleep impacts so many different things. Um, I talked to a group recently about drowsy driving.
Mm,
I hate that term. It's
mm,
so benign. It sounds so frivolous. Drowsy driving is as dangerous as drunk driving.
right.
And it's not, it's people there was something in social media not too long ago about a family who were headed to one of the amusement parks. They wanted to avoid the lines, get there early. So the mother took off, at 2 in the morning to drive
Oh my
to
gosh.
beat the traffic.
Oh,
And so, of course, they're in a horrible accident. And, I tell people, don't, you can't just roll down the window and chew on ice or turn up the radio to avoid a microsleep, which your brain will have a microsleep if you're tired enough
ooh,
or if you're on the road with everyone else that's tired. I mean, but we have to be so cautious and say, am I usually up at this time? Do I need to be driving to say, is it worth 2 hours of, waiting in line to sort of put everyone at risk? We just saw the story about the nurse who drove off of a parking
yeah,
deck
yeah, yeah,
after a 12-hour shift.
yeah.
You know,
What's a micro
so
sleep?
our
I haven't
safe,
heard that term before.
yeah, I mean, it's like this little itty bitty sleep that will happen. I'll tell you how people know they've had one. So if you go, we talked to truck drivers. We used to screen
Yeah,
truck drivers for sleep disorders. They're at a mile marker or sign or something,
yeah.
and they just all of a sudden they're at another one and don't remember the last however many miles. Incredibly dangerous. But
Ugh,
your brain, if you're without sleep for long enough, I mean, your brain just sort of clicks off. I mean, and it's not this volitional thing where I can say, oh, I'm, hold my eyes open. I mean, it will just, after so many hours of without sleep, it'll happen. And they can last just a few seconds, but they can be deadly.
yeah.
So think of it in the context of teenagers who teenagers need 9.25 hours of sleep every night. How many teenagers do we know that get that? Very few, and that's not good.
Mm-mm,
That's the understatement of the century. That's not
right.
good. But so they're new drivers. That's so scary. And then what we know about sleep, it just, We're more inclined to take risks when we're sleep deprived. We have no judgment. We can't problem solve. So we're more likely to abuse substances. We're more likely to take all kinds of risks. And think about the depression and anxiety that affect teens just in their normal days, in their normal lives. But when you add sleep deprivation on top of that, you get into some really bad situations with suicidal ideation. Really, really, and I see these schools clamoring for more mental health professionals. And I'm saying, well, hey, you're starting at 7 a.m. Let's get around that.
Yeah.
But again, we've got a society that's worried about bus schedules.
Yeah.
Where, at some point we have to put health first.
So I have 2 more questions, and I know we've kept you here for a bit, but we have this conversation in our home. When is it time to get a new mattress? And is it really impacting our sleep quality? Or is that just sort of a non-issue?
It's a huge issue, and it's so simplistic. You just think, oh my gosh, no, the sleep surface is very, very fundamental. And we've had people come in. I used to ask some of our sleep doctors to ask patients about the mattress, and they are like, I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
But I say, you got to go there because it's so basic. And I think it's often overlooked. So I think paying attention to the sleep surface and the sleep environment is overlooked and should just really garner more attention. And I talk to people all the time with temperature issues. They'll say, I'm incredibly hot when I sleep. Well, guess what? There are new textiles out there. The technology involved in the mattress industry is amazing. And there are all kinds of technologies to cool the sleep surface, to elevate the head of the bed, the feet of the bed. I mean, really to make people incredibly comfortable. Whereas years ago, it just was sort of one and done. And there wasn't a whole lot of, you could maybe go soft, maybe go firm.
Right.
And that was about it. And now there are a whole lot of options that are definitely worthwhile because we really have to put that sleep quality on number one. And I also think we have to reevaluate our partners. And if you have a bed partner, how do you get the best sleep with that partner? And where do you put sleep in terms of the importance of that relationship? I never want anyone to tell me they don't want to hurt their partner's feelings, but if they have a different temperature preference or something, we've had some couples that they can't sleep together, and it's not a sign of a bad relationship or trouble in a relationship. It's having the maturity and the wherewithal to understand that sleep is fundamental to a good relationship, quality of life, and day-to-day living, and that if you put that first, you're going to be better off rather than trying to sleep in a bed with someone and you're not getting good quality sleep. And don't compromise. You just can't compromise a good night's sleep.
Yeah, that's
and
so
just do what it takes.
Talking about like sleep divorces and stuff like that. So that's partner sleeping in
separate rooms or separate beds.
Affecting the relationship, absolutely, right? Like if you can't function the next day, you can't be positive and optimistic and loving and all these other things that come with a good night's sleep. That might be something to think about. Okay, last question. I got to ask this because you brought it up in the beginning, but we kind of got away from it. But screens, what do we do? Do we just shut them down, turn them off? Because we know that blue light's hitting this pineal gland, which is sensing melatonin, right?
Melatonin.
Should they just not be in the room? Like, what is the recommendation with screens currently?
It's going to depend.
For sleep,
Yep. Yeah, I know. I mean, and we can't sort of demonize the whole screen thing. I mean, we're going to have to learn how to have screens in our lives and get good sleep.
Right.
We can't compromise do anything to hurt the sleep. So it's just a matter of, can you put it down in a way and out of sight, or have a media curfew? Or have a bedtime alarm an hour before you go to bed that says turn off everything. I've got a lot of people I've talked to that they have a problem. They get up in the middle of the night to use the restroom. Then they check their phones. Well, then they get the hit of light. Then they start looking at content. And then they're like, well, maybe I've got one email. I mean, then they're down a rabbit hole and they're up for an hour, if not more. And so it sort of depends. But I also have people who say they can take their phone, put it upside down, put on a boring podcast, and they're out like a light.
Right.
If that works. again, find that sweet spot. I do try to ask people to swap it out. Like if screen time is your ultimate sort of me time, relaxing time, I think there's always something you can swap it with,
Yes, for sure.
whether it's flipping through a fashion magazine or, crocheting. I've got a friend who just is hooked on it now and
Yeah.
loves it and finds it so relaxing. So I would look at sleep as your ultimate me time and self-care time, but try to find something to swap that screen if that's a major source of entertainment at night. Find something else and save it for the morning. And we got to be role models for the kids. Again,
Very
getting back
much.
to they have to learn early to respect sleep and sort of see it as all important. And we have to respect it and prioritize it accordingly, schedule it in our lives, and delegate other things.
I love
And
that.
but see how much better we can be with sufficient sleep.
I love it. So if you've never been motivated to sleep, hopefully you are after listening to Terry Cralle talk to us from the Better Sleep Council about the importance of sleep and getting good restful sleep to function fully in the world. And the more we talk to different experts, this keeps coming up because you can't regulate hunger without sleep, you can't regulate
Yeah.
stress, you can't regulate your moods, focus, concentration, inflammation. We can talk about so many different ways that sleep ultimately impacts us. And I love that visual of the triangle with sleep is the foundation and then diet and exercise kind of interacting with that. So, Terry, thank you so much for taking time out today to join us. If people want to learn more or get more involved or connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yep, through the Better Sleep Council. Bettersleep.org has great information all about sleep, all about mattress shopping, and
Mattresses. Yay.
and a lot of great tips on getting a good night's sleep every night and taking some of the stress out of it.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Terry, so much for joining us today. I appreciate it so much. For all of you watching and listening to this episode of Superwoman Wellness, don't forget to rate it and review it and share it with your friends. And if you send me a screenshot to hello@drtaz.com, I'll send you a free bottle of Boost.